Welcome back. So catching errors like this is perfectly fine. This is a good way of working with it, but what if we actually wanted to use the observable setup where we can kind of say, let's just get rid of this noise right here. I'll just remove the catch again. What if we wanted to say subscribe, and then the first call, you know, that's an observable, is actually the result if everything works out. But then you also should know that if you do a comma right here after the next, or the first part, the first parameter in the subscribe, if you do a comma, you'll actually end up with the error. And how do we actually make that error pop up in here instead of having to do the same thing we just did, where we wanted to actually try catch? What if we wanted to handle this with an observable? Well, luckily it's very, very simple. So let's try and do that. Let's try, instead of using the try catch, to actually say if you put in something that's not properly defined inside the add product, let's return an observable that throws an exception. So we, instead of ending up in here and actually navigating to a new page, we'll end up in here in the second parameter of the observable, and there we'll actually end up with an error that we can then show again an image, an alert or something like that. How do we handle this? Well, it's very, very simple with RxJS if we use the newest versions. And if we go in there, what you can actually do inside, instead of throwing an error right here, there's actually a way to make an observable automatically be sent back by saying return throw error. That's how simple it is. I just have to return throw error. Let me show you what that is in a second. I'll just put the message in here, and I'll just remove this old throw error we have right here, which is the way to use the TypeScript errors without observables. So now this will actually return an observable to me. Notice this is an observable right here, and you'll notice if you go to the top, you'll see that the observable right here is actually coming from, there it is, RxJS throw error, right? So that's actually just creating a new observable and returning that. Now what does that mean? That means before we had to kind of wrap this in a try catch, right, to make this happen, but now we can actually go in, and in our add component here, we'll actually hit this guy if we actually put in undefined. And then in here we can now do the alert. Let's just try and put that in there again. This time we'll put the alert right here, and we'll show the error again. Bad stuff happened. There we go. And then in here we're going to put the error, right? There we go. So now we have, now instead of try catching this, we'll actually subscribe. If it goes well, we'll end in the first parameter. If it goes bad, we'll hit the error, right? So that's how you can use observables. Let's try and see this running. So again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm creating a product right here. I'm going to choose the product. I'm going to end up with undefined, and I'll do an add, and you'll see, boom, bad stuff happened. You need metadata, right? So same idea. It's just not throwing an error directly now. Instead, what we're doing is we are wrapping it inside an observable that we are then returning down here. Let me try and show you again. There we go. So now we are turning an observable right here. Instead of actually just throwing an error and destroying the program, we're getting back an observable that we can then handle inside the error parameter inside our observable. So perfect stuff. Let me just show you one more thing before we end this. If you go back to the product service, what if we're inside the pipe, there's an error thrown somewhere in here? Well, you can actually do a lot of things. First of all, you can actually go in here and do a comma, and then you actually can call something called catch error. I just copied it in right here, and this is just an import, right? So this is just a way of handling an observable again. And what it'll do right here is it'll go in and it'll actually catch any errors that happens inside this pipe, and it'll then redirect that error. And in our case, we could actually throw an error right here if we wanted to. So we'll just say, again, throw the error, and then we'll just pass in the error right here that was just created. So now we again returning an observable in the switch map, right? Or inside this pipe, right? So again, there's a catch error inside the piping where you can handle errors. Now this is rather complex, and you have to kind of figure this out yourself, because if something goes wrong in the wrong area, you'll actually stop your stream, pretty much meaning you won't get the error thrown back at you. So you have to be pretty good at placing these catch errors inside, for instance, inside the switch map. You might need another pipe, and then you need to kind of figure out, does the error actually trigger as it's supposed to? Now, this is where testing gets into. It makes it so much easier if you start testing your code, where you kind of say, if I send this in, I expect an error. If the error is not coming, something is wrong. Let's fix it by adding the catch error in the right locations, and then at some point we'll get the error to the surface, right? Because there's nothing harder to bug track than an error that gets swallowed somewhere in the system. You can't find your way through your system if you don't get the error thrown in your face. Okay, so I'll end it right here with the error catching right here. Now you have some examples on how you can throw errors, how you can catch errors and then rethrow them if you want to. And that should be enough to kind of work with error handling for now. When we get back to testing, I'll show you even more. And I think we'll end it right here. I want to show you one more thing in the next lesson, and then we'll start wrapping down this series. See you next time. Have fun.